Hello, everybody, and welcome to the From Poverty to Progress channel, the channel that is devoted to promoting an awareness and understanding of progress. My name is Michael Magoon, and I am the author of the From Poverty to Progress book series. The first book is out. It's called From Poverty to Progress, Understanding Humanity's Greatest Achievement. The second book will be coming out later in 2023, and it's called Promoting Progress, a Radical New Agenda to Create Abundance for All. If you'd like to see more about this channel, please see the introduction to the channel playlist for more details. If you stay tuned for the rest of this video, there'll be a free book giveaway at the end. This episode is about understanding the causes of modern progress. I believe the most important concept for understanding that is what I call the 5 keys to progress. So I'm going to go into a little more detail during this episode. But first, let me explain why this all matters. I mentioned before that I believe we need a progress movement that does 3 things. And one of those things is to research history to identify policies and practices that actually promote progress. I believe that we need to study history to identify what works. And we can't do that until we first agree on a useful and measurable definition of progress, and 2, establish a theory of the causes of progress that accounts for past progress. It needs to be simple enough to understand, but detailed enough to be accurate. And above all, it needs to be actionable. In other words, we need to use the theory in order to develop policies and practices that actually work for today. In a previous episode, I explained what I believe is a useful definition of progress. You can go back to the What is Progress episode for more details on this. But for now, we can say that progress is the sustained improvement in the material standard of living of a large group of people over a long period of time. To account for past progress, we need a theory that covers all of human history, aligns with proven theories of physics, chemistry, biology, and other sciences that explain pre-human history. It also explains the current state of nations across the globe and has a plausible explanation for exceptions to the rule. Typically, most theories of economic growth focus very much on what is going on today, looking at a specific country or a region, or looking at a specific time period. I believe that by focusing on all human societies across all of history, we're able to effectively increase the sample size. Ask any statistician. If you have a small sample size, it's very difficult to draw any real conclusions from the study of that small sample. However, if you can increase the sample size dramatically, then you can come to some very real conclusions. I believe that we can apply that to the study of history by looking at all human societies across all time. We're effectively dramatically increasing our sample size so we can really start to hone down on what the causes of progress are. Our theory must explain why no other species invented progress. Humans are the only ones who have been able to transform their environment to increase their material standard of living. We must also account for why progress did not exist for the vast majority of human history. We must explain the origins of progress, when and where that progress originated, why the progress did not evolve anywhere else or at any other time, and finally, why each society joined in on that progress. Now, to do this, we need to balance 2 separate things. One, we need to keep it simple, but we also need to make it accurate. Many theories in the past have been focused on one cause. That cause may be class, geography, energy, freedom, and all those things do matter, but I don't think any one of them helps us to explain everything. But we can also go to the opposite extreme of where most traditional history is, which is about a description of what happened with no real explanation for the causes of why it happened. Ideally, we need to focus on a small number of critical causal variables. In other words, we need to have a middle ground between where there's one cause to explain everything and so many causes that it really just involves a basic description and you really get lost in all the details. Our theory must be general enough to apply to all societies across time and geography, but specific enough so that we can derive actionable policies and practice. And this is a really difficult balancing act. You want to be able to be as accurate as possible. But you can't get lost in all the little details for every little society. You need to see what they have in common and what there's different from other societies that do not experience progress. I believe that the 5 keys to progress, which I will explain in more detail in this episode and in following episodes, is an essential unifying concept for understanding progress. I believe the 5 keys to progress are the necessary preconditions for a society to change from a state of poverty to a state of progress. And the great thing about this theory is it's also actionable. We can derive policies to make things better today. In other words, by helping us to understand the past, we are able to make the future a better place. I believe the 5 keys to progress enables us to cut through all the clutter of history and modern times so that we can focus on what really matters, and enables us to answer many of history's most difficult questions. So, what is history? Well, a lot of you from your high school history class were probably pretty bored because it focused on names, dates, and events, and it really consisted of memorizing a lot of things that really didn't make a lot of sense. I don't think that's really what history is about, even though that is how it's typically taught. I believe that to understand history, you need to get beyond the names and dates and events and focus on trends. And we need an intellectual toolkit to help us to understand the most important trends in history. So that way it's memorable, and that way we can apply it to our daily lives and towards making the future better for all of us. I believe that human material progress is the single most important trend in modern history, and the degree to which people have enjoyed progress is largely determined by long-term historical factors that go back centuries or even millennia. But on the other hand, we clearly know that entire societies can jump from poverty to progress in just one generation. It's happened many times before in the past, so we have to balance two opposites. We have long-term historical factors on one side that keep things the way they are, but we also know that societies can change things. We have to explain both sides. We must learn from history to transform our future. For most of history, there was no progress because these 5 keys were either completely missing or they were very underdeveloped. A few societies, however, had unique geography and political environment that enabled them to evolve the 5 keys to progress. And in previous episodes, I've given a brief overview of those societies. One thing that's important to understand is this progress did not come from government. That doesn't mean government doesn't matter. These long-term trends come from society, not from government. It also does not come from political activism. Political activism does matter. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it really doesn't help us to understand the long-term trends of modern progress. Nor have political leaders played an important role. Certainly when you study history, you learn a lot about individual leaders, but when you look at the overall trends, you see that they're just blips, and they generally do not have an important impact on the long-term progress that their society is experiencing. The same goes for specific pieces of legislation or the establishment of government programs. I'm not arguing they don't matter. I'm just saying that they don't change the overall trend in modern societies. If a society is stuck in poverty, specific pieces of legislation and programs probably aren't going to change that. And if a society is experiencing progress, it won't change that either. Nor has redistribution changed things very much. The fact is, long-term, widely shared economic growth helps people far more than any redistribution within societies. I believe we need to look at progress as though it's an evolutionary process. It was not inevitable in outcome, and it is not inevitable in the future. Progress is not controlled or directed by the government, any organization, any person, any group, or any god. In fact, in many ways, it's very similar to the biological evolution of species or entire ecosystems. Progress is the outcome of millions of small-scale decisions made by individuals who are trying to solve short-term, local problems. They might do that in factories. They might do that in offices. They might do that in construction sites. One of the problems with determining causality within an evolutionary process is that it's very complex. There is no simple, this one thing causes this other thing. I believe that there are really two levels for understanding an evolutionary process. One is you need to understand the necessary preconditions that enable lower level factors to come into existence and survive and change over time. To give an example, to create life on Earth, we needed the sun. We needed nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and other organic chemicals. Those, along with other factors, are the necessary preconditions of life on Earth. But they really don't explain how it all works. The second level are the specific mechanics that explain how that evolution takes place. This usually consists of multiple mechanics that interact with each other in very complex ways. I believe that the 5 keys to progress are the necessary preconditions of progress, and how progress works are the specific mechanisms that explain how that progress takes place. Now, I'm going to go into a little more detail on each one of these, both in this episode and in many subsequent episodes. So, what are the 5 keys to progress? Well, the first key to progress is a highly efficient food production and distribution system. For the vast majority of human history, people were living in a struggle for survival because they had to devote all of their time to acquiring enough food to eat. And that really didn't leave enough room for solving other problems. Traditional societies were stuck in pretty much the same place, which is absolute poverty, for generations, centuries, and even millennia. But a few societies managed to increase food production, and this enabled them to overcome geographical constraints to food production so that large number of peoples can focus on solving problems other than getting enough food to eat. And when you have this surplus of food, then you can go on to the second key of progress, which are trade-based cities, packed with large numbers of free citizens possessing a wide variety of skills. Now, if you look at the history of innovation, you can see that virtually all innovation occurred in cities. There's some innovation in rural areas, but they're pretty rare. Innovation requires people coming together, densely populated, to innovate new technologies and skills and organizations and copy innovations made by others. This is only possible in cities, and cities can only evolve when farmers are productive enough that they can ship their surplus food into the cities so other people living in those cities can then focus on other problems. They don't need to think about getting enough food to eat. They can just buy it. Well, that seems pretty simple. You go from productive agriculture to cities, and the cities are where all the action is, and then you automatically get innovation. Well, that's not how it really works. In practice in human history, we've had 2 fundamental problems. One is as the food surplus goes up, then people have more babies, and those babies eat the food. So you're right back where you started. Second of all, and even more importantly, in every society that has evolved agriculture, you have elites that confiscate the food. They use that surplus for flaunting their wealth, having a wonderful life while all the peasants are working in the field, by building up powerful military machines so that they can conquer other societies. So throughout most human history, as the productivity of food production goes up, that just makes the rich richer. And that does not create progress. Fortunately, a few societies evolved a different way of doing things. Instead of having centralized control by powerful elites who extract the food surplus from the farmers, they learned to decentralize political, economic, religious, and ideological power. And in particular, they forced elites to compete against each other in transparent, nonviolent competition. So because of that, they were no longer able to forcibly extract wealth from the masses. This enables citizens to choose through elections and through the marketplace, and by choosing what church they want to worship at. They can choose what institutions work for them, what offers the most for the individual and society in general. So that forces the elites to give the people what they want, which is a higher standard of living. But that's not enough. One city, no matter how wealthy, can never have enough in order to make its citizens wealthy. They need the 4th key to progress, which is high value-added industry that exports to the rest of the world. When you do that, you inject wealth into a city or region that accelerates economic growth and increases the wealth for the vast majority of people. And this creates markets for small local industries, services, restaurants, and a tax base for the government. So what we have, starting around the year 1200, and then accelerated until the Industrial Revolution, we have a few commercial societies in northern Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, and England that acquired 4 of the 5 keys to progress. But unfortunately, that benefited mainly a few cities. The rest of the people were left out. The 5th key to progress was missing. And that 5th key is widespread use of fossil fuels. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, fossil fuels, they're supposed to be bad, right? Well, there are bad side effects of fossil fuels, and we should be aware of them. But we can't be so focused on the bad side effects that we forget how important fossil fuels are for progress in wealthy societies, and they're even more important in poor societies. The incredible energy density of fossil fuels injects vast amounts of useful energy into society, enabling it to solve a wide variety of problems. Without fossil fuels, life would return to a daily struggle for survival that dominated most of human history. Now, I'm not saying we'll never invent a better energy source than fossil fuels. In fact, I think we're almost guaranteed to do so if we keep progress going. But for now, fossil fuels are a fundamental precondition of progress, and we need to make sure that before we phase it out, we have energy sources that are better than fossil fuels. So far, we haven't done that. And in future episodes, I'll explain why. So, each of these 5 keys to progress are necessary, but none of them are sufficient by themselves. To experience progress, a society needs a critical mass of all 5 of these keys to progress. Once a society acquires the 5 keys to progress, that society transformed into a vast, decentralized problem-solving network where everybody in their daily lives goes about solving other people's problems at scale, and then everyone gets to decide which one of those solutions we want to purchase or copy. This network functions a lot like a biological ecosystem. There's no one in charge of it. It just happens because people have the incentive to make it happen. The 5 keys to progress enable humanity to move from slow change with no direction, which is essentially what the vast majority of human history was, to progress that benefited mankind. Now, many societies did it much earlier than others, but the trend is very clear throughout the world. As long as the 5 keys remain in effect, a society can solve an extraordinary number of problems. The result, in the long run, is widely shared prosperity. So, if you made it this far, it sounds like you're interested. Where do you go for more? Well, first of all, I would watch more episodes of this channel. You can also go to my website, frompovertytoprogress.com. With a free email subscription, you get free ebook samples, free audio samples, and discounted prices on ebooks and audiobooks. If you insist on paying full price, you can get ebooks, paperbacks, and hardcovers at Amazon, or if you're a bookstore and a library, you can order them at Ingram Spark. Audiobooks are available at Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. You can also check out my library of online book summaries at techradget.com, which summarizes almost 300 books on technology, history, economic growth, and progress. So you made it this far. Congratulations. Now we're on to the free book giveaway. It's going to be a digital copy of my first book, From Poverty to Progress. Here are the contest rules. First, you need to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Second, you need to join my website, frompovertytoprogress.com. It doesn't cost any money. All it requires is your email address. Then you need to leave a constructive comment on this YouTube episode. It doesn't have to be positive. It could be negative, but just something that helps me understand why you're interested in the channel and what kind of topics you would like in the future. Exactly 1 week after this video is published, I will randomly choose one commenter. I will post the username of the winner in the community tab and ask the person to email me. You must email me within 1 week. After I authenticate you, I will then email a link for the free download. Well, this concludes our episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you can view more of the episodes because they'll be coming out pretty fast. See you next time.